I invited you after you commented in one of my posts about leadership in hospitality, and you just said like, that's easy to fix. And I love that.
I did. And I can still remember the name of the hotel. So they gave us a show round, and I came back to the breakfast table with mum and dad, and they were like, well, how was that? And I was like, I'm going to be a hotel manager. And it's like, okay. And from there on, sparked my passion. It sparked my interest in the industry, and I went on and completed my studies.
If you can remember, what was that passion?
The passion was the interest in people, and I've always been a people person. Getting to know people, taking care of them, supporting them, and making sure they enjoy themselves. And that interfaces in hospitality. That's what we do. From an operational perspective through to even in HR, it's what we do. I think it's a caring profession. It's a service profession, but it's a caring profession, because if you don't care about the people, then you don't give them good service. It's quite simple. So there's those elements that I've learned. I've also learned how not to do it, what a good redundancy looks like and what a bad redundancy looks like, how that communication should happen, the length of notice, how to be compassionate, how to be empathetic, how to be supportive in the process. I joke with my team many years ago, we used to have a phrase, and it's a very common phrase of, we do this, but we'll do it in a nice way, right? Because we have to do it in a nice way. But actually living that and saying, I will make you redundant, but I'll do it in a way that you are happy, comfortable, supported, content, give you the possibility and the best chance of success to find a new position.
What's up, hospitality? Mauricio Schiller, your host here, and by the end of today, I hope to answer a question that haunts me for a very long time. Why hotels keep failing at staff training, and maybe how to fix it. To help me out here, please join me in welcoming Sarah Brooks, the managing director and founder at Fikra HR in Dubai, with over 20 years of HR experience, including key leadership roles in the UAE's competitive hospitality sector. Sarah is a global recognized expert, named one of the top 101 global HR minds. Her firm provides real-world support across the full employee life cycle, from the UAE labor, law compliance, and performance management. Sarah Brooks, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, Maurizio.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I invited you after you commented in one of my posts about leadership in hospitality, and you just said like, that's easy to fix. And I love that.
I did? Oh, no. I must have had an off day.
And I love that. Then we had a chat, and I love your energy as well. You bring the challenge with the humor. You have a massive experience. And I want to start from the beginning, because when we first met, you said that you told your parents once when you were 11 years old, I will run a hotel. Like,
yeah.
Can you take us back there? And what Sarah was this 11-year-old Sarah?
So, yeah, that's going back a couple of years now. So I was really fortunate in my youth that my father worked internationally and we had the opportunity to travel. And one of the sort of more memorable opportunities we had was to spend some time in Jakarta in Indonesia. And we were there relatively short period of time, but we lived there for 2 months, stayed in a hotel as a long-term residence. And I was 11 and my brother was 8.5, 9, something like this, across the summer period. And time-wise, we're talking early 80s. So back in the day when tourism wasn't quite what it is now in the world globally, but also in Indonesia, in Jakarta. And let's say Western expat child with fair skin and fair hair, and my brother was the same. We were somewhat of a novelty in the hotel and around and about in the community. So we obviously had built up friendships, as it were, with the staff that were there. They made us feel at home, made us feel comfortable, took care of us. We weren't babysat by them, but we were, they were friendly with us at the buffet in the mornings and things like this. And at some point they offered us to have a show round of the hotel, of the back of house areas. Because, I was familiar with where the restaurant was and the reception and the the swimming pool and stuff like this, So they said, hey, let's go and show you around. So they did. They took us back of house. They showed us the kitchen. They showed us the laundry facilities, housekeeping areas, the conference, all of this kind of thing. And this was in the old, and for anybody that is still in Jakarta at the moment or is familiar with it was in the Intercon. So what was the Intercon? I know the hotel is still there. It's under a different name now, but it was the Borobudur. And this is like, just to give an idea, this is 40 years ago and I can still remember the name of the hotel. So they gave us a show round and I came back to the breakfast table with mum and dad and they were like, well, how was that? And I was like, I'm going to be a hotel manager. And it's like, okay. And from there on, it sparked my passion. It sparked my interest in the industry. And I went on and completed my studies. I still have conversations with a career coach at school. So in my secondary school, where they started asking me about what you want to do in life and your career and everything. And then I still have the handwritten notes from that. It was a land before computers. A handwritten note in that stating, Sarah's really passionate about hospitality. She really understands, why she wants to go into it, what it means and what have you. So that's where the love affair, I guess you could say, or the drive and passion started and how it started.
And how driven you were as a child, right? To have all these written notes on already showing this passion. And if you can remember, what was that passion?
The passion was the interest in people. And I've always been a people person, getting to know people, taking care of them, supporting them and making sure they enjoy themselves. And that interfaces in hospitality. That's what we do from an operational perspective through to even in HR. It's what we do. I think it's a caring profession. It's a service profession, but it's a caring profession because if you don't care about the people, then you don't give them good service. It's quite simple. And if you don't care about what you do, you don't give good service and a good product. So it's that passion is what drove me and sort of has driven me even until now with everything that I do. It's that same energy that I put into it.
And did you work in hospitality basically in every sector of the hotel, right? Can you just tell me, where did you go? Where did you start? What parts did you play? And what did you like the most?
So my first work experience was unpaid when I was 16. And I did a week in a local country house hotel in the beautiful Buckinghamshire countryside in the UK. And I spent, of that week, because I was only 16, so I couldn't spend a lot of time in the bar and serving food and drinks and what have you because I was too young. But I did sort of get an overview of that. I think I spent about half a day in reception. I spent half a day in the kitchen. And then I spent 4 days of that week in housekeeping, cleaning rooms and making beds, right? And I still wanted to do it. The kitchen, I even remember to this day, we learned how to make profiteroles. I don't think I've ever made them since, but they showed me how we made profiteroles from scratch, which is, one of the more technical and difficult recipes that any, pastry chef will tell you. So that was when I was 16. And then I went in to do work experience when I finished school. So in the summer holidays between leaving school and starting my university course. And I went to work at the Sheraton Knightsbridge Hotel, which is a beautiful 5-star hotel round the corner from Harrods. And I worked in the kitchen. So I went from school with an all-girls boarding school, just for the whole cultural shock elements here, from an all-girls boarding school to a kitchen environment, which is extraordinarily male-orientated in a high-pressure environment, working unpaid as a trainee with no clue. I had loads of fun. I really enjoyed it. I spent time in garde-manger. I spent time in pastry. I spent time on sauce. I learnt lots of different skills and techniques that I never thought I could do. I was shelling buckets of prawns for the buffet service, all this kind of stuff. I'd never done that before in my life. And it's like, right, come on, let's go. Let's crack on with this. And there were skills that I learnt then that I still use today. And it, really, really put me in good stead. It was really daunting. I was doing it completely unpaid. My parents, God bless them, funded my transport to and from work every day. But I did this to expand my knowledge and my skills because it was something that I understood. The more knowledge I have, the better I can be at the job that I want to do. And because I'd set my sights on being a general manager, I had the understanding that actually to be a great general manager, you need to understand how all the pieces of the jigsaw fit together. So that was like, okay, I've done, I have some experience in kitchen. I then went on and studied, and I studied at Bournemouth University. I did a BTEC diploma in hospitality management, so hotel catering and institutional management, to give it its full title, or bun making and wine tasting as we commonly knew it. It's a good, it was a really good learning grounds for me to develop on my school studies and give me the opportunity to expand my knowledge from all the more technical bits and pieces that you would need. And part of that was operational skills as well. So working in the restaurant, on the management side, on the service side, on the kitchen side. So again, you're getting more skills as you go through. And then working in my holidays, working during term time to support myself, housekeeping, bar service, silver service waitress, you name it, all of those kind of excellent opportunities. So when it came to finish university and stepping out into the big wide world, I applied to multiple companies for jobs, for the management traineeship and things like this. And I kept getting rejected and couldn't understand why, until somebody said, come and do the assessment with us for the management traineeship. So I went and did the assessment and they rejected me. They said, but we're rejecting you for a good reason. It's because you've got too much experience. You're already qualified. You already know how to do these things. So I then was offered a position with them and stepped into a junior food and beverage management role in an airport hotel, which is fabulous, and spent time there learning about everything food and beverage, duty management, fire alarms, guests, complaints, all that good stuff. And then moved from there to take a position within room service. And from there, moved to an assistant manager of a property, again responsible for food and beverage, but for a busy local hotel on the south coast of England. From there, I moved back up to London and went and worked in conference and banqueting. So understood sort of the meeting and event side of things in a very big and busy property in London, from the organising to the hosting to the setup, the invoicing, everything and all of that side of things. And then moved into a slightly different vein of hospitality, but into university. So halls of residence for students. And I was deputy general manager for what was essentially a 1,250 bedroom hotel. That was each room for halls of residence for students. And in the holidays was converted, or I say converted, but sold as accommodation for football trips, for, schools to come over and do activities, for conferences, this kind of thing.
How old were you by then?
About 26.
Wow.
27, right. Something like that. That
Cool.
was 1998,
Right.
give or take. Yeah.
Wow.
So I and then I was fortunate enough that, and I say fortunate because it was, my manager went on maternity leave and I was asked to step up and cover her as acting general manager for a period of time. So I had a very quick progression and then applied to be a general manager of hotel in its as a standalone role, and was rejected from that, which is fine. But because I got to the final stages and they said, well, have you ever thought about doing HR? I'm like, hang on a minute. I've done housekeeping, front office, food and beverage, and I've never done HR. No, let's go and do HR. So I thought, what's the worst that can happen? I am either really good at it, I like it, I don't like it, at least I do it. I get into that company. I've got the chance to, because that was with Accor Properties in the UK. I've got the opportunity then to go in multiple different directions because they were big then, they're even bigger now. And that's where the story ended, but like my career took a different trajectory because I moved to the HR role and I stayed there. I was looking after 2 hotels for 3 years and was like, actually, I really enjoy this and I'm actually really good at this because I've got everything of my framework and my my underpinning of all the knowledge of the operations helps me be a better HR manager, helps me be a better recruiter, a better interviewer, assessing people's skills and capabilities, as well as performance management, understanding people's mentality, dealing with employee relations situations and things like this. Because I've been there and done it, bought the t-shirt, it gives me a different viewpoint than many. So, and that's where I've kind of stayed and settled in HR since 2001. It didn't stop me from getting involved in operations. I got back involved in operations to a certain degree at a property in Oman when I was there back in 9 until 11, supporting day-to-day, responsible for various bits and pieces, but helping out from food and beverage, housekeeping, you name it, all bit everything, duty management again. So yeah, I still have had my hand in, not so much recently, but it's still there on the outskirts.
And let me ask one question then, because you had like this like incredible journey from a very young age in an unpaid employee, like the dream of every hotelier, and working your ass off, right? And like, where did you get the most of your knowledge? Was it through the training you received, or was through the experience that you faced? Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the show and if you are learning something new today, please consider following the show, subscribe to our channel, or leave us a review. It helps us to help more people through the podcast, and it would mean the world to us. Thank you for listening, and we're back on the chat.
I would say it's a combination of things. So I think most of the operational knowledge was actually through learning on the job, making mistakes, being told this is the right way, the wrong way to do things by somebody who's done it before, and also being managed by people. So it's, we all have good and bad managers in our careers. It's being able to learn from them to say, this is good management, this is bad management. Understanding, this is bad management by my values, not by everybody else's values. And then learning and saying, okay, I won't repeat that. So I know how that made me feel. I don't want to make people feel that way. So I'm not going to replicate that when I get to managing teams and what have you. Some of the more technical elements around things like from an HR perspective, I would say, and especially as a young manager, how to deal with difficult people handling complaints. What are the basic do's and don'ts? Yes, that has to come from, it can come from experience, but it has to come from training. What the legalities are for recruitment, how to screen a CV and do these things. I think I did 2 or 3 different recruitment and interview and selection type courses as internal courses with companies, from Thistle Hotels to Accor Properties over the years, to get to the stage where I am at the minute, that I'm, obviously teaching other people. I'm teaching students on how to beat interviews, like how to do interviews. I kind of come full circle. So there's a balance. There's a certain amount of sort of what I would call hard skills, and I know oftentimes they're called soft skills in the workplace, but those core elements that are kind of not non-negotiables, but this is a process-driven thing or a legal-driven thing that needs to happen, versus the soft elements of dealing with people that can often be done through experience.
And when it comes to, you told me about redundancy. You've been redundant a couple of times in your career,
Yeah.
and you still have fun about that. Like, I want to understand, like, what did these moments really teach you? What it teach you about resilience in hospitality and about management in general?
So I have a firm belief that every HR manager and every leader in a business should be made redundant at least once in their career, because then they know what it feels like. And when you know what it feels like, when you are faced with having to make that decision and perform it, you do it 100 times better, because you know what it feels like to be on the receiving end. I consider myself fortunate to have been made redundant or have my position terminated for about 7 or 8 times in 14 years. Yeah. For a number of different reasons. Some of them through nationalisation in the UAE, for example, through non-renewal of contracts, through to proper redundancies with global economic crisis, COVID crisis, and even some questionable redundancies, I would say, where, as someone who is in HR, as an employment expert and relative legal expert, can sit and say, actually, that's constructive dismissal. That's not a redundancy. You're just, why not be transparent about the reason that you hired me in the first place, kind of thing. You just wanted a project person. I can look at that all very objectively and rationalize it and look at it through the eyes of the people making the decisions. I completely understand. I don't agree with the decisions they made, but they made them. The first one was absolutely the hardest. They do get easier. I have become attuned to and very aware of, in a corporate position, the red flag indicators that come up that might indicate that your position, I mean, COVID's an extreme example, but even prior to that, of things that come up that you think, maybe my position's a little bit at risk here. Maybe I need to be conscientious, right? So being super attuned to those, keeping my ear to the ground. This is what it's taught me, to have my eyes open and not be complacent about the work that I'm doing and the job that I'm doing. And that's why I think every manager needs to go through it as well, because it pushes you to do better in your work. Because if you are complacent and you think, oh, I'm safe, I'm okay, and then you kind of relax, and maybe you do slip. Maybe your quality slips, your communication slips, your attitude and behavior. If you kind of think, well, oh, maybe we're not doing so well, they're going to be looking for people, and we know, right? And I say this about myself, and we know that when companies are making decisions for redundancies, they will look at the people who are the most expensive, who aren't in profit generating positions. And this is not just hospitality, this is across the board. But they will also look for people who go, do you know what? They've had a few mistakes recently, or we've had a couple of issues with that person or attitude or whatever it might be. So you want to make sure your head is not on that chopping block from where you can control. You can't control your salary. You shouldn't control your salary, but you can't control, how well the business is doing, but you can control your own performance. So just being aware that maybe I need to be giving 150% instead of 110 to make sure I'm not, making simple mistakes and keeping my head above water. So there's those elements that I've learned. I've also learned how not to do it, what a good redundancy looks like and what a bad redundancy looks like, how that communication should happen, the length of notice, how to be compassionate, how to be empathetic, how to be supportive in the process. And, I joke with my team many years ago, we used to have a phrase, and it's a very common phrase of, we do this, but we'll do it in a nice way, right? Because we have to do it in a nice way. But actually living that and saying, I will make you redundant, but I'll do it in a way that you are happy, comfortable, supported, content, give you the possibility and the best chance of success to find a new position. So giving people 3 months notice instead of 1 month, giving them the opportunity that even if we give you 3 months notice and you find another job, we're still going to pay you that 3 months notice. We're not going to hijack it and say, oh, well, you left after a month, so we're only going to pay you for that. Think about all of these little bits. It's especially critical over here because so many of the population in hospitality support their families. And it's something that I know globally, hospitality is not the most well-paid industry in the world, but individuals will have 90% of their salary sent home to their family within 5 days of receiving it, and will live literally hand to mouth on what is left for the rest of the month until they get paid again. If they're made redundant, you're impacting not just one person, a whole family. And it's those little things that it's taught me over the years. I need to be mindful of this. And take care of this when I'm having communications.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I was preparing some questions and you're answering them already. So we are kind of connected via Wi-Fi. Yeah, I love that. And if you think about the main core question that drove me to reach out to you, why do so many hotels still fail to take learning and development seriously? Even when the staff turnover is so high and it's one of the biggest challenges that they face. Do you believe that they can connect that high staff turnover with learning and development, or what's wrong about the training that they never call their right attention?
So from my own experience, when I started my career in HR, the hotels that I was working with had, in their first year I was there, staff turnover between the two of them over 100%.
What?
Okay. Yeah. And it was not all positions. There were a few positions that they kept turning over staff because they didn't have the right processes in place. And it wasn't through lack of support, because these were Accor hotels. They had a very strong communication with the UK regional office. They had a strong communication with Paris head office. There were very good learning opportunities and skills-based upskilling opportunities for team members. The challenges came because they weren't high. First of all, there were failures in the recruitment process. So they weren't necessarily spending the time to hire the right people. It was sometimes a knee-jerk panic. We need someone, 2 arms, 2 legs and a head. You'll do. That's great. Do you speak English? Yes, fine. That's enough. And for the centre of London, yes, it's great to have different languages, but you're still predominantly speaking in English. So there were lots of different mismatches with the candidates that were being put in. So that was one part of the work that I did. Another part of the work that I did was actually looking at how can we do succession planning? How can we make sure that people want to stay with us? And that was using the opportunities for the learning and development that were in place. So identifying, okay, this person is an assistant manager. What skills are they missing? What training can we give them from Accor and put them through that course and get it budgeted? And we were really lucky because the general managers for the two properties had the same vision and had the same understanding. And Accor as a company has that to support in the budget, to say, you must have L&D in the budget. You must have sufficient money to do these things. So they facilitated it from that respect. We put people through management courses. We did the skills-based training with individuals, even with people who, and I remember clearly, there were a couple of ladies who were like, no, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. And I was like, okay, fine, no problem. And we did the training because it was skills-based training. So we did it through assessments, so visual assessments. So we sat and watched them whilst they were working, went, yeah, but you've got all the skills. Here, have a certificate. And they were like, oh my God, super excited, super pleased. It meant that they got an uplift in their salary. They had this qualification. Then they were like, okay, that isn't so scary. Maybe we could do the next level. So it was just finding what people wanted to do, making sure that we had access to and supported them with doing it. By the time I left the hotels, we had 7% turnover.
Okay.
I had emails of people, when can we come and work with you? Tell us where your vacancies are. Because we had such a good reputation within the properties in the UK and even outside of the UK for developing our staff. People went on from us to be front office managers, general managers, deputy GMs in other properties who had joined us as a trainee. They came and did their internship with us for a year and then stayed with us and went on. Part of that is the ethics and values of Accor as a company, but it's also about the management in the property saying, yes, let's do this. So in terms of, if we, come back to the question, I know it's possible because I've done it, but you've got to have the right support framework and network to do it. You've got to have the courses available. They've got to be relevant to the individuals. And that's something that is dependent upon the size of the business, is available, but maybe somewhat lacking. There's an awful lot of responsibility put on individuals to use online LMS systems rather than taking them out of the business and saying, out of the operation, go and sit in a meeting room for a day or 2 days and learn how to be a manager, learn what are the skills of complaint handling or how to be, do recruitment and interview selection, whatever it might be. Okay. Which is what it was when I started. Nowadays, the impetus is for the individual to spend their time, personal time, online learning. There needs to be not just the financial investment, but the time investment from the businesses to encourage and support team members through their learning pathways. And I think that's where it fails. We have more than ever more accessible, and there's more different courses available online that you can shake a stick at, with things like, I'm trying to remember, there was one that we used to use back 2018, 2019 called Flow, which was online hospitality training platform. Absolutely amazing. Loads of really great courses, but it required the individual to do it in their free time.
And what you're saying here as well, it requires a lot of leadership, right? And
Yes.
good leadership, not only by understanding that you should have the resources available and invest in the resources as well, but also being an example and being available, giving your time to lead and show people how things are done. By the interviews I'm getting, people I'm talking to, leadership is the weak link right now. After COVID, a lot of people left the industry and many of the leadership positions were rushed to fill in with people that were not prepared or just don't have the profile to be there. And many of them are hiding themselves from the public eye, right? So they rather not face guests, they rather not walk through the properties and just hide behind a spreadsheet. Do you see that happening? And if that is the problem, how can we put in place what you're saying?
I think from COVID, because one of the hardest hit industries globally was hospitality. And I don't think that's been recognized enough and verbalized enough. And the impact of that on people, from people who had reduced salaries, lost their jobs, who are working away from home. I mean, here in Dubai, the vast majority, like probably in hotels in the UAE, you're looking at 90 to 95% of employees in the hospitality industry are not locals. They're not Emiratis. They're every other nationality you could possibly imagine. So they're all away from home, all away from family. So there's been a big psychological impact as well as a sociological impact on them with COVID. Add to that, you've got higher demands for revenue GOP from owners and from hotel operators who want to save money. Cost of living is increasing, cost of raw materials, everything else is increasing, which then impacts on salaries because they're dropping the salaries. So people are getting squeezed on, well, you've got a job, this is the best we can offer, take it or leave it, happy days kind of thing. And people are being forced to accept such, salaries that are lower than they would be if we hadn't had COVID. Right. I don't believe the hospitality industry is fairly compensated for the work that it does either, in terms of looking at the, salary benchmarks, because of the type of work that we do. I think it's very tough and it's very challenging. And I think some of the outcome of COVID, but also with social patterns at the moment where there is more emphasis on individuals' mental health, resilience, and what have you, raising people's awareness within hospitality of actually my mental health is suffering because of the work I'm doing. I'm very passionate about the work that I do and the environment that I do it in, but it's not healthy. And, I look at myself and think about the work that I used to do and the times where I would work, when I was in operations. I have very amusing memories for different reasons of actually having to be on duty for 36 hours because somebody didn't come into work, so I had to cover them. And I did a late duty management shift, which was 12 hours in itself, and then had to be on night manager duty in the hotel because the night manager was sick and couldn't come in. And then I was on an early duty management shift. So I was like on duty throughout with no sleep. And I was responsible for the hotel. I was responsible for every guest in that hotel during that time. Anybody who did that now would be like, hello, overtime, that's in breach of the law. And people would be voicing it. At the time, I was like, okay, this is fine. We can do this. This is, not a problem. And you just drive on through and then catch up on sleep afterwards. So there's those kind of things that I think is causing people's behavior in the workplace to be a bit different than historically. And I'm not saying that historically was right. I don't think it was. I think from a industry culture, there are certain behaviors which have been replicated and perpetuated, which to a certain degree should not be retained and put to bed. More often things like the very aggressive management style that some sectors of the industry can take. It's not, doesn't matter what nationality or what gender you are, but, we have all seen Gordon Ramsay on TV and that persona. And we can all, for those of us who are in the industry, can all say, yes, I know an exec chef who was like that or still is like that.
I know.
It doesn't make it right, but with the way that society is changing and developing, that is no longer tolerated. And I think that's where people are saying, actually, I don't want to be out there in front because I want to, be away from, because I'm trying to protect my mental health. People who are in the firing line from customers, because customers are there are, a niche few who feel they are overly entitled. And I've dealt with multiple myself and have many stories about them we won't go into now. They feel they're overly entitled. They feel that you are serving them, therefore they have the right to be rude and aggressive to you. That again can damage your mental health. It can disturb you, and if you get that multiple times a day or a week and your line managers are not supporting, then I would do the same thing and hide in a corner and say, if you're not supporting me, I'm not going to go and deal with it. You go and deal with it. One of the things that I've always taken care of and pride of is standing up for my team. And if I'm in reception or wherever and I see and hear a guest of any description being rude, I will, shouting, using foul language, whatever it might be, I will turn around to that person and say, you either turn yourself down, sort it out, or you leave. It's quite simple. We don't accept this. It's not on. Right. But a lot of managers don't do that because there's the old adage, the customer is always right. And, people go, oh, well, that's business. I'm like, yeah, there's other people lining up. They'll come. It's not a problem. It's not like one room night's revenue is not going to break the bank. Somebody behaving like this, if I have this employee resign because, or have to have counseling or coaching or therapy or whatever it might be because of mental health issues, that's on me. That's not on the customer.
And it's so difficult nowadays with the public reviews as well, because the customer will go online and tell their own side of the story. And one thing that when we are training our staff here, I always say that we have three kinds of truth, right? There is my truth, your truth, and the reality that happened on the day.
Yep.
And unfortunately, when it comes to reviews, customers, they craft the story that they want people to feel most disgusted about the property with the way that they felt. It's a one-side story and it gets very hard.
Yeah, it does. It gets really difficult. And, with things like TripAdvisor and responding to people on that, one of the things that I've always found is even if somebody gives you a bad review on TripAdvisor, great. What you can demonstrate is how you deal with that, right? Don't be afraid. Give me a bad review. I'm not fussed by it, because if you give me a bad review, I can learn from that. But I can also demonstrate to other potential customers, you flagged something up. I agree with you, it was wrong, and this is what we did to put it right. So, and if it was something that you don't, because quite often customers will have a bad experience, but won't mention anything whilst they're there. They'll do it when they leave. It's almost calling them out, for want of a better phrase, but putting that flag in their face saying, we asked you every day, is everything okay with your room? And you said yes. We asked you to fill in a questionnaire before you left the hotel and you said everything was fine, or you refused to fill it in. It's unfair of you to then hold us accountable for things that you didn't give us the opportunity to correct at the time you stayed. However, we'd still like to give you a 50% discount or an upgrade or whatever it is for the next time you come and stay with us. So we'll try and make it right next time, because it's easier to retain the business than it is to bring new business. And I know that flies in the face of the previous comments I made about telling people to go away if they're being rude. But you still, if you've got somebody who's like, okay, well, let's give them another chance, and you wow them, then you've won them over from well, I had that problem. And then it's very difficult for them to go back to that complaint because you've corrected it.
Yeah, that's right. And where time is flying here, just notice now, let's get to one of the things that we want to find out for our hoteliers here, that's finding some solutions as well. Like, we pointing the challenge that they have, and probably many of our listeners are relating to them, but you've worked with like global hotel brands, as you said, and independent hotel family owned hotels as well.
Yep.
What's one traditional solution that hotels can apply right away to improve staff retaining and retention?
For me, it's having conversations with the staff, keeping that communication open, right? Allowing them to express, I'm happy, I'm not happy, and honestly express without retaliation, without retribution, without any kind of yes, buts. Okay. The minute you open your mouth and say yes, but, or yeah, but we've done this. Yeah, but we've given you that. Yeah, but you're rationalizing and you're trying to remove their feelings, and you can't do that. You have to accept that that person is not happy. You could give them a gold leaf pen, coffee bean, whatever, like it doesn't cover up the fact that that person's not happy to receive that. They wanted something else. So listen with open heart, open mind, open ears, and hear what people are saying. Don't listen to respond. Go away and sit with that and work out if there are commonalities between feedback and comments that you're getting, and then address it and put solutions in place. Some of the most simple things that I've done have been looking at provision of meals. We all know it's a perk of hospitality that you get in some areas accommodation. Mostly you get meals on duty. If they're cooked by the hotel, if they're cooked by an outsourced catering company, look at the quality, especially if with a lot of hotels in a lot of regions, staff are accommodated on site. They're provided 3 meals a day. It's that they don't have the provision to go and cook food for themselves. So making sure that they get food that they like, that's healthy, that's cooked fresh, that's not too oily, all this kind of thing is traditional. It's a recipe from home, whatever it might be, but that they are comfortable eating, giving them the options and the variety. It's a very small thing in the grand scheme. It doesn't cost a lot more because you're paying for it anyways, but it makes a huge difference to the employees. Looking at the accommodation that's being provided, is it clean? Is it well maintained? Is it well painted? Is it taken care of? Do you provide extras? Do they have TVs? Do you have games nights? Do you have parties for them? I don't know, monthly gatherings. Do you play silly games with them and have fun and let your hair down? Do you talk to them about what's happening in the property? Having a transparency around what is actually happening will bring a team on board. Talking to them to say, and I've seen this in the global economic crisis in 2008. I've seen it with properties in Dubai more recently, where we were facing challenges with ownership wanting higher returns. And rates dropping and all kinds of stuff. And we actually, we took the time to communicate. This is what our revenue is. This is what our GOP is. This is what our costs are. This is why we're being asked these questions. This is what we need you to do. This is what you're doing well, and we need you to continue doing. This is why we're asking you 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So that they understand they have a vested interest. It's not an panic, if, buts, and uncertainty. So these are all things that are in the hands of people at the moment. It doesn't cost any money to sit down with people and say, hey, here's the profit and loss. This is the bits you need to know. Here's, you need a lick of paint on the wall of your bedroom. Sure, we can do that for you. Your bed needs repairing. Sure, we can do that for you. You don't have the right type of rice. And that sounds flippant, but in Dubai, we have over almost 200 nationalities in Dubai. I never knew there were so many different types of rice in the world as there are when you're trying to organize a canteen menu with Arabic rice, Indian rice, Filipino rice, Malaysian rice, Thai rice, and even Egyptian rice. And then there's other Pakistani rice. And I'm not being flippant about it at all, because each of them are very different, but you wouldn't know it till you put them next to each other. I come from a very closeted UK that didn't have a lot of rice options back in the day. So looking at those small things, right? But for a nationality that might have rice 3 meals a day, and that's their staple, if they don't have that, that's a big issue for them. And that can be the difference between, do you know what, I'm going to go and see and find something else because they really don't care about me, because they're not addressing my basic needs.
So if I'm hearing why, it's a lot of care, right? Not only care about who they are, but also care about what they know and sharing the information that they need to know to better relate to the task that they have to. That would sum up.
Yeah. And taking the feedback from them as well. What questions do you have? What feedback do you have? What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And taking that with an honest, open heart. It's not about you as an individual. It's about what the hotel, the company, the leadership, the stakeholders are doing. And then how can we make that better? What differences can we make to improve that for our team?
Cool. And if you would redesign onboarding your hotels today, what's the one thing that you would throw out completely and the one thing that you never compromise on?
So an ideal onboarding for me is a day, 2 days, 3 days, not in the operation. And it's the first thing that you do in the company. You don't start until you've done it. It involves all of the stakeholders at some level. It's not just HR, to share and embed the values, the ethics, the philosophy of the hotel, the brand, the company, the mission of what it is and what needs to be achieved, and get everybody on board together. It's not just about filling in forms. It's not about watch this video and watch that video and then answer these questions on a digital platform. It's actually building a team and building a relationship with your colleagues in the workplace. So it's also, yes, there are those administrative bits and pieces to do, but that's par for the course, absolutely. But helping people settle as quickly as possible, making sure that they've got the right space in their room, that their name badge is spelt properly, that they've got their uniform and they know where to go, and that, they get the right training in the department and they get handheld through. So for me, having a buddy system in departments is an ideal. Having a face-to-face orientation onboarding program in a training room with people on site in the hotel, with people being involved in that, is a non-negotiable, and getting people to understand what it is you're doing. I think and I'm happy to name this, one of the best ones that I've implemented was one from a South African brand called Sogo-San. They have a hotel here in Abu Dhabi that I was fortunate enough to be involved with at their pre-opening. And we put from the corporate office in Johannesburg through to some very experienced consultants here, put together an onboarding platform for this property and a program. And it's one of those things that when they talk about the values of the company, they have senior leaders, and it's only doing a video, but they have senior leaders and key people from head office from across the workplace, really heart and soul saying, this is the value, this is what it means. And even to this day, I can't hear the music that they used over that or watch those videos without getting a lump in my throat. And that is from 10 years ago. And that is the impact that that had. And I can't tell you how many times I presented that in the 3.5 years that I worked with them, but it still has that impact on me. And I still have those fond memories that I still strive to achieve that type of presentation and that type of onboarding in other companies that I go to, going, this is what good looks like. We need to replicate this because it works.
Amazing, amazing. Onboarding every successful hotelier that I speak to emphasizes the importance of a strong onboarding in a room where they feel part of the culture, where they actually learn all the aspects of the culture before getting to operations. It's when it comes out, and that's the next question, and I'm going to make the link, because when we talk about independent hoteliers, they miss to understand themselves and they miss to actually think about the culture and the values that hold them together. It's just a transaction between themselves and with guests. No, Noah, how many times I asked, what's the value that holds your company, or what's the mission of a company, just to know, and they say make money, right? And it's so often. So
Yeah.
if you would imagine that you are devising an independent hotel that has no structure whatsoever for onboarding or training, and I am surprised to find out how many are out there, right? Can you give us like 3 clear steps that they can take in the next month or so to build a foundation for their staff development?
They need to understand, for staff development general, as opposed to onboarding. So they need to understand what are the key skills for each role. So what are, and I would be surprised many don't have this, and it's not just hotels, many companies don't have these job descriptions, and they don't need to be really heavy technical documents. It can literally just be a job, like, okay, if we think about a waiter, right, must know the menu, must be able to take an order, understand what gluten intolerance means, dietary requirements, understand what the specials are every day, what spoon is used for whether it's soup or dessert. These are basic skills, but at what level you would hire someone. So it can literally just be a shopping list. And then that forms your skills matrix, right? Again, not complicated. And, list it on a piece of paper or on an Excel spreadsheet and have your list of skills and your list of people. Do they have it? Tick, 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 tick. Do they have it? And which ones don't have it? Right. Well, that's your training plan. And it's not rocket science. It's not difficult. It doesn't need a massive, investigation and what have you. You can get if you've got supervisors or managers in your team, if it's a really small property where it's, a general manager and a few others, you can sit down in a room together and go, okay, does everybody know how to do this? And what about this? And can we do some, and then look at who you've got in your teams that can do the cross-pollination, who can do the training, and teach someone, this is how you do silver service. This is how you do that, and whatever that, how to open a bottle of wine. And it could be that simple. Like, people don't want to do it because they don't know. They're frightened they're going to cork the wine or break the cork or this, that, and the other. How do we do this? How to pour a pint of Guinness versus a pint of whatever. It's all skills that you learn, but somebody somewhere has to know how to do it to teach others. And if you've got one person, get that person to teach everyone and share the knowledge and share the information, because that will build the strength of the team. And independent hotels don't need to have a formal vision, mission, value statement at all. They literally just need to have a bit of a brainstorm. There's nothing wrong with saying, we want to make money. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But how are we going to make money, right? Charging reasonable room rates, okay, fine. But encouraging repeat guests, providing exemplary service and products. Okay, and then what does that, driving it down from that into things? Because I think anyone who says, oh, we just want to make money, okay, fine. But there's got, every company wants to do that. I want to do that. But how am I doing that? Is the key, is the difference, right? People wouldn't go into business if they didn't want to make money. You'd be like, you just wouldn't. You'd be a not-for-profit and a charity in that instance. So it's understanding the behind why and how, which will give you the values and the behaviors that you're looking for from your individuals that you work with. And then how do you explain that to people?
Yeah. Do you allow me
If you think, please.
Sorry, do you allow me some life coaching now then? Like, if I to provide some not life, but life coaching here. Because when I have that conversation and they say, yeah, like to make money, normally it comes with a laugh afterwards.
Yeah, because they're not,
because they
it's,
just say like that's the why we have the business. That's what the owners want, right? My answer to that is always like, what business mission is not to make money? Like that's the goal of a business, is to make money, regardless of your mission, regardless of why you exist. If you cannot make money, you cannot have a business, period. You are doomed. So if you only think about the mission as to make money, my point of view, and now I were to get your point of view on my thoughts here, is the staff will think that whatever they do is related to make money, is related to a transaction, including that they will never pay me more for what I do, because if they want to make money, my salary is against that. So basically what you build is, it's a mindset, a company mindset, that it's all about transaction and I will not get more for what I do. Does it feel right?
I 100% agree with you. A lot of people will have the nervous laugh when you say, oh, why are you in business? Oh, I want to make money. And it's a nervous laugh. It's an a subconscious response to the question that's being asked, because you are asking them a question that they are uncomfortable to answer. They haven't thought about it, or they have thought about it, and it seems difficult to voice their feelings and their thoughts about it. So it's easier to brush it off with, oh, we want to make money. So there's that sort of, and I'm not a psychologist by any stretch of the imagination, but I've seen this enough times to understand that of individuals. So you've got to sort of dust that off and move, give them the confidence, give them the space to move past that. Now, your commentary around creating a culture and a mindset of it's all about money, yes, absolutely. That is what will happen, but the business at some point will fail, because maybe not in the short term, medium to long term, it will not be as successful as it could be, because everybody will be penny pinching at every opportunity. Oh, well, we can't do that event because that means we have to pay overtime, and we're not going to pay overtime. We just want to take the money, right? Or we won't use the stuff that we've got. We'll use cheap free labor to do the event because we can get students for less than we would pay overtime to our staff that will give good service, that know everything. And then you'll get complaints and you won't get people coming back from events. Or it could be, quality drops from the type of meat that you're providing in your food, through to the sheets that you're putting on the bed, the laundry service that you're using that isn't cleaning things properly, the housekeeping, if you outsource it and they're not good enough, whatever it might be, because you'll be looking at penny pinching the whole way of, oh, we could get it cheaper, or we could get it cheaper, or we could get it cheaper. And this is what happens in the UAE very commonly with the larger companies and businesses who are always being pushed to reduce costs. Majority of hotels over here are probably running close to minimum or below minimum staff levels because of that demand and push for making money by the owners. So it's not just private hoteliers and individual hoteliers that do this, it's the big ones as well, because they don't have an option, they've got nowhere to go with it. But ultimately, it does pull the business down. It does pull and deteriorate and detract from the product, and then detract from the quality of the environment. Now, I worked for many years ago, Thistle Hotels in the UK, and they used to have a very small property on the south coast in Plymouth. And it was probably one of the most underfunded hotels that they had in their network. It wasn't up for renovation ever, so we took it on ourselves within the management team with the general manager and what have you to, in the quiet off-peak season, renovate it. So we had myself, the executive chef or head chef, the front office team or the housekeeping team. We were pasting wallpaper. We were painting the rooms. We bought furniture that was still in good state at a very reduced rate from hotels that were renovating. So we bought their second-hand furniture that was better than what we had to upgrade our room so that we could charge a higher room rate, right? We were literally putting wallpaper and paint on the walls that cost £1 a roll. £1. Right? I don't know what that is in euros, but anyways, we were able to increase the price. We still had repeat corporate guests coming back to us time after time, week after week, because of the people, the service, the environment that they were in. it wasn't a glamorous hotel. It wasn't even it didn't have a star rating. It was that bad. Okay. I mean, in terms of fixtures and fittings, right? But the people made the difference. They got welcomed at reception. We knew them by name. We knew what time they were arriving. We had the same route. We took care of everything that we could for them, and they loved it and they kept coming back. And for me, that's the difference between that environment of penny pinching and being able to, we didn't have money, but we weren't in a penny pinching mindset. We were just in let's make the most of this and let's encourage people to come versus, a penny pinching mindset, as it were, and gradually deteriorating the product.
Yeah, no, 100%. And let's get to towards the facing the future, because we've been discussing a lot, and I have the feeling sometimes that hospitality is going to a staffless environment, right? That will probably explore a lot of this staffless world until maybe a Gen Alpha today will open a hotel in 30 years from now and put the staff back, and wow, that's such a great idea. Why nobody ever thought about that before, right? But what's your thoughts? Where are we going with hospitality, and how can maybe training help or not in that environment?
I don't think it can go completely staffless. There are certain humanistic skills from manual dexterity skills, let's put it that way. If you look at culinary techniques and things, right, there are some that can be replicated by and are replicated by machines. Absolutely. You would need, in some instances, some seriously advanced robotics to be able to create some of the decorations and presentations and what have you that you get. I mean, just look at some of the, it sounds straightforward, but how to prepare a fillet of tuna for sushi, right? Or, let's go the serious route and do the fugu, okay? If the robot does that and get it wrong, you've got a big problem on your hands, right? So there's those things that I don't think will ever go humanless. The customer service touch points elements. How frustrated do we get with automated customer service processes as is? Your, chatbots on WhatsApp or SMSs or over the phone when it's dial 6 for that and 7 for that and 42 for this and whatever else, right? I just want to speak to a person. Yeah. That's why you're always going to need a human of some description to do this. If we can find a robot that can clean a room and make a bed up, happy days, because that is backbreaking work. I know there are hotels in Singapore that are using robots for room service deliveries, extra towels and slippers and things like this, which is fantastic. And I think that could be something. Even for delivery of luggage, that could be something instead of concierge tripping it upstairs all the time. That's another route to go. There are hotels, and there have been hotels for a long time, some of the Accor brands, that have had intermittent or reduced front office interactions. So having numeric keys instead of a physical key card to access rooms, which is great until the system breaks. And when the system breaks and it's the whole hotel that breaks and you've got all of the guests sitting outside of their bedroom, and I've been one of those people many years ago sitting outside of a hotel room going, well, that's my room, but I can't get in because your system doesn't work. And having to do a voice call to a centralized duty manager somewhere in France to get a solution and what have you. It's great until it's not. So you still need people there to be there when it's not working. AI is advancing extremely quickly. Technology in itself is advancing extremely quickly. And I think to incorporate those elements into the work that we do in hospitality, yes, absolutely. But by nature of what it is, a computer, a robot, does not have sentient behavior. It does not have compassion, empathy, emotions. It cannot say, yes, I know how you feel because I've been in your situation, because it never has. It can do, but it will be insincere because it will be programmed to say this. And that then is going to elicit a whole raft of responses from people who will be like, yes, but you're just talking rubbish now because you're a robot. I know very well that that's just programmed. So, put me through to your manager kind of thing. So I think there's always going to be a need and a requirement for people in hospitality. I hope that the skill sets will be more in demand and more highly prized and recognized. So you will be rewarded and compensated more for those skills in a world of robotics, let's say. I mean, if we look at, and I know this is an odd example as a comparison, but if we look at manufacturing and we look at cars, at some point, the Model T, Ford were all made by hand. And gradually, we've gone from that hand production through to mass production. And yet the cars that have the highest value are still the ones that are made in small, limited numbers by hand. Lamborghini, Ferrari, Bugattis, whatever else. They're all made by hand and they are the most expensive to buy. We need to retain that model in hospitality.
It's true. It's true. And when it comes to training, what technology you are excited about?
I'm excited about I do use a lot of AI tools for myself, but I also, in my work that I'm doing at the moment, but I also recognize that it can get things wrong. Recent times I've been involved in various recruitment projects and bits and pieces and using recruitment platforms for clients and things like this, and have seen firsthand where it goes wrong. That there's stories on and around about certain very large HR platforms that are being taken to court because they have widely discriminated in the US based on, for applicants. So the risk factors are huge. I don't think we should rush into using AI and technology very quickly. I think we need to get settled with what we've got and get that working properly before we start doing lots of other stuff, because the risks are huge. But what I would say is that we need to utilize the technology and the analysis capabilities that we've got. There's a lot of information that we have in hospitality around our customers and guests, around our staff, that we can utilize to improve our services, to improve our products, to improve the customer experience. And I don't think that's being done enough. If we look at, I remember when I started, we didn't, back in whatever year it was, a long time ago, was in a land before Microsoft Excel, for example. And, we didn't have emails, we didn't have these things. So I'm of a generation that remembers having lists of people and go, oh, well, this is Mr. Jones and he likes this room. And, you'd have a reference card with that information on it. We can upskill that. And I know that the systems do, but we need to make sure that we're using it when people are booking in, and not just in the 5 or 6 star hotels, in the lower star hotels as well, because there's no excuse for it. So educating people within the properties, not just the manual skills, but the technological skills as well, and making sure that people are moving forwards with their capabilities. Oftentimes, oh, you work in housekeeping, why do you need to know how to use Excel? Well, why would they not know? Let's keep that skill up to date. Let's give people the opportunities to grow and develop and keep up to date with the different technologies that are happening. And the risks of those technologies as well, because with all of this technology, with AI, with everything else, you've got so many scams that are happening, and the people that are targeted are the ones that don't know. So I think we have a responsibility to make sure that we educate people as much as possible.
Awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much. It was awesome. How can, how can our audience learn more about Finkrach, right?
Fikra, yeah.
Fikra, or get in touch with you, sorry.
No, don't worry. So Fikra is it's an Arabic word, and it means ideas, which is why I have the light bulb as my logo. So I have a website, which is fikrahr.com, and that's fikrahhr.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook under the same name. You can find me under my name on LinkedIn as well and reach out to me. My email address, my mobile phone number and there is a contact me form on my website. So please, reach out through there. Multiple ways to get in touch.
I'll put all the links there. And before you close, a last message to our hoteliers listening.
Keep enjoying what you do. Keep the passion is what I would say. It is a fabulous industry to be in. And there are those days that seem really hard and really dark and really tough. But look to the happy times, look to the good times, and remember what you do for people. You have a unique opportunity to have really special moments with people that the majority of the world don't get. So enjoy it and do it well.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Much appreciate this conversation. Chilerinos, thanks for listening once more, and I'll see you next time. Bye.